Have you ever stood at the edge of your own limits, wondering if you had enough strength left to rise again after life knocked you flat? It's a feeling few admit, but many know, the sting of doubt in the eyes of others, the quiet voice that whispers, maybe you're not enough. You try to push forward, yet distractions pull at you, emotions drag you down, and every small failure feels heavier than the last. The world tells you that strength is a gift reserved for the chosen, for those born with luck or talent. But that is a lie. Real strength is forged, hammered out in silence, shaped by pain, tempered by discipline. It belongs to those who refuse to bend when life demands they kneel. Most people settle. They bow to circumstances, excuse their weakness, and call it acceptance. But a few choose differently. They sharpen their mind, guard their heart, and walk forward even when the path cuts their feet. Today I want to share with you 12 keys drawn from Stoic philosophy, principles that can steady your spirit and help you move beyond the crowd. Stay with me, and perhaps you'll discover the quiet power that changes everything. As we step into the first chapter, picture this: a crowded room where voices overlap, each trying to outdo the other. One whisper turns into another, one rumor gains momentum, and before long, reputations hang by threads spun from idle talk. Have you noticed how easily people are pulled into this cycle, even when it leaves them emptier than before? In offices, in classrooms, on glowing screens, the same dance repeats itself, an endless exchange of words about others, while time, the most precious of resources, quietly slips away. Now imagine sitting at that table, listening to the laughter that feeds on someone else's mistake. In the moment, it may feel harmless, even amusing, but deep inside you know it comes with a cost. Every remark spent judging another steals from the energy that could have been used to grow yourself. Marcus Aurelius once said, "When you arise in the morning, think of what a precious privilege it is to be alive, to breathe, to think, to enjoy, to love." Those words cut like a blade through the fog of gossip. Life is a privilege, not gossip. The Stoics remind us that the mind has only so much strength to give. Waste it on gossip, and it weakens. Invest it in building, and it sharpens. Seneca warned, "The more we get involved in other people's business, the more precious time we waste that should be used to improve ourselves." His words are not abstract philosophy. They are survival. Every moment given to judgment is a piece of your life you will never reclaim. Take the story of a young man working in a high-pressure office. His colleagues spent every break talking about who might be promoted, who was faltering, who was secretly disliked. At first, he joined in, laughing, speculating, eager to belong. But he noticed something. The more he spoke of others, the less progress he made on his own projects. His focus blurred, his creativity dulled. One day he decided to withdraw from those conversations. Instead of whispering, he read during breaks, practiced new skills, refined his craft. Within months, while others spun in circles of talk, he stood out, not because he was louder, but because he was better. This is what gossip robs you of: progress. It's a thief that enters smiling but leaves you hollow. Ask yourself, what is the real gain in lowering someone else? Does it make you rise, or does it reveal your fear of being left behind? Stoicism teaches us that our measure is not in comparison, but in discipline. A disciplined mind does not bow to envy. A disciplined heart does not crave another's downfall. Step back for a moment and look at the bigger picture. Social media amplifies this hunger for comparison. You scroll through curated successes, bright highlights, curated smiles. The temptation to judge, to envy, to mock is powerful. Yet the moment you choose silence, the moment you refuse to join the chorus of voices, you reclaim a hidden freedom. In that pause, in that refusal, space opens for reflection, for growth, for peace. I recall another story, a woman constantly compared to her peers. At first, she felt inferior, her energy consumed by silent judgment. But one day, she shifted. Instead of scrolling to see what others had achieved, she wrote down 3 things she could do better that very day. Her focus turned inward. Over time, those small, private victories built her confidence, her strength. While others wasted hours measuring lives that weren't theirs, she built her own. That is Stoic power, not in tearing down, but in constructing a life so strong it needs no defense. This is where the turning point lies. Do you want to be the person who leaves conversations drained by envy, or the one who leaves silence behind as a path to strength? True resilience is not in being louder than others. It is in refusing to let others' stories dictate your emotions, your goals, your sense of worth. When you choose not to speak ill of anyone, you are not only protecting them, you are fortifying yourself. Remember this: the greatest difference between those who surpass and those who stumble is not intelligence, not luck, not even opportunity. It is focus. The successful refuse to scatter their energy on trivial things. They do not feed the fire of gossip. They guard their time as they guard their breath. So ask yourself, the next time words about someone else hover on your lips, what could you be building instead? A new skill, a stronger body, a clearer mind. Your silence can be the soil where resilience grows. Your restraint can be the shield that protects your peace. In choosing not to talk about others, you are making a profound statement. My energy belongs to my growth, not to my envy. And here is the hidden truth. When you step away from judgment, you step into freedom. The freedom to live fully, the freedom to rise without dragging anyone down. The freedom to surpass not by competing in noise, but by excelling in silence. That is where strength begins, and that is where we move to the next key on this journey. Moving into the second chapter, imagine holding a fragile flame cupped in your hands. The night is cold, the wind restless, and one careless word could snuff it out. That flame is your idea, your ambition, your quiet plan to reshape your life. And yet, how often do we, in a single impulsive moment, expose that flame to the storm by telling the wrong person, at the wrong time, what matters most to us? Think about it. A dream shared too early can wither under a flood of opinions, doubts, and careless remarks. Someone laughs, another raises an eyebrow, and suddenly your conviction begins to shake. Not because the dream is weak, but because the world rarely guards what it does not understand. Seneca once warned, "If you wish to keep a secret, first learn to keep it from yourself." His words are a sharp reminder. The most sacred seeds only grow in silence. A seed that sprouts too early, exposed to trampling feet and harsh weather, never has the chance to grow roots. Consider how even the most powerful companies, places like Google or Amazon, guard their ideas with secrecy. They understand that if an idea leaks before its time, it can be stolen, copied, or dismantled. Why would your vision be any different? Your dream, no matter how small, deserves the same protection. Not everyone wants you to succeed, and some who smile at you may secretly long to see you falter. Honesty is a virtue, yes, but honesty without discernment is a weakness that others exploit. Here's where the Stoic lens sharpens the truth. Discretion is not fear. It is discipline. It is the courage to nurture something quietly, to let it breathe and grow in the dark before showing it to the light. Epictetus reminded us, first say to yourself what you would be, then do what you have to do. Do, don't declare. Build, don't boast. Let action speak before words. I once knew a man with a bold plan. He dreamed of starting his own business, leaving behind the monotony of corporate life. Excited, he told everyone, friends, family, even casual acquaintances. At first, he basked in their reactions, but soon came the doubts. That's risky. Do you really have the skills? Most businesses fail. With every comment, his fire dimmed. Months later, he had abandoned the idea altogether, not because he lacked ability, but because he let their voices bury his resolve. Contrast this with another man, a quiet worker. He told no one. Nights he spent sketching, testing, failing, and learning. When his project finally emerged, it wasn't a fragile idea open to ridicule. It was a finished reality. The silence gave it strength. And yet, secrecy carries another gift: intrigue. Have you noticed how silence makes people lean in? When you don't broadcast every move, others begin to wonder. Curiosity grows. Your silence becomes power, giving you control over what is seen and when. This is not manipulation, but mastery. A kind of quiet authority that does not need applause, only progress. Social media tempts us to do the opposite. Studies show that most young people feel pressure to display their lives constantly, goals, struggles, every small win. But here's the trap. The more you present, the more you dilute your energy. The fire you could have used to create is spent feeding an audience that doesn't care as deeply as you do. And when the praise comes too soon, it tricks you into believing you've already arrived. False satisfaction replaces real progress. Think of Elon Musk, a man admired for bold visions. Before every major project, he keeps his next steps secret. He understands that the element of surprise is not only strategy, but strength. When he finally reveals his work, it lands with force because it comes complete, undeniable, real. That is the kind of presence you create when you hold your secrets close. So guard your flame, protect the seed, trust the silence. Your discretion gives you space to experiment, to stumble, to learn without shame. No critic can derail what they do not see. No rival can steal what they cannot touch. True self-mastery grows in this hidden soil. It is not cowardice to keep quiet. It is wisdom. It is the strength to choose action over talk, growth over applause, depth over display. And remember, when you hold your secrets, you also hold your destiny. You walk with confidence, not because the world believes in you, but because you no longer need it to. That is why the Stoics saw discretion as a form of power. It frees you from noise. It makes you resolute. It keeps your eyes on the work, not the whispers. But here is the question that lingers. If silence protects your dreams, what about the moments when life itself cuts you down? When struggle weighs on you so heavily that you want to spill your pain to anyone who will listen? Is speaking of your suffering strength, or is silence once again the greater weapon? This is where we must go next. For the true measure of power is not how loudly you announce your plans, but how quietly you endure the storm. Advancing to the third chapter, picture a runner collapsing on the track. The crowd leans forward, whispering, waiting to see if he will rise or remain on the ground. That runner could be you, caught in life's endless race, grades, promotions, expectations, all eyes watching, some cheering, many waiting for you to stumble. And in that moment of weakness, when the weight feels unbearable, the instinct to shout your pain to the world is strong. But what happens when your struggle, once spoken aloud, becomes ammunition in someone else's hands? Now imagine scrolling through your feed, post after post of people sharing their hardships, seeking sympathy, fishing for comfort. It feels honest, even brave, but the truth cuts deeper. One moment of openness can turn into a lifetime of vulnerability. Not everyone is kind. Some will pity you, others will judge you, and a few will use your confession against you when the time comes. One unguarded word can undo months of progress. The Stoics knew this well. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." His counsel is simple. Don't justify your struggle. Don't explain it. Don't hand it away. Rise, act, endure, and let your results speak louder than any story you could tell. Here's where the power of silence reveals itself. Take the story of a man building his dream business. The pressure crushed him. Sleepless nights, failed prototypes, mounting doubts. He could have shared his burdens to win sympathy, but he didn't. He worked quietly, carried his struggle alone, and poured every ounce of energy into the solution instead of the telling. Years later, when his success emerged, no one remembered the nights of despair. What they saw was the outcome, and that outcome spoke more powerfully than any tale of hardship ever could. Contrast that with another man who complained loudly at every obstacle, each setback he announced, each difficulty he broadcast. People listened at first, then began to doubt. If he talks so much about his problems, they thought, maybe he doesn't have the strength to overcome them, and slowly respect dissolved. His words built walls he could never climb. This is the trap. The more you speak of your challenges, the more power you hand away. From here, understand the paradox. We crave freedom, control, and independence. Yet every time we overshare our struggles, we chain ourselves to the opinions of others. Their advice, their doubts, their judgments begin to shape our choices. Instead of acting from clarity, we act from fear of what they might think. In silence, you hold the wheel. In silence, you keep the authority of your own life. Jeff Bezos once admitted that if he had wasted his energy justifying Amazon's early failures, he might never have had the strength to see it through. Silence gave him clarity. Silence gave him endurance. Silence gave him the ability to transform failure into fuel. The Stoic way is not about suppressing pain, it is about mastering it. You can feel the sting of failure, but you do not hand it over to others. You hold it, you study it, and then you move forward with precision. Here's the hard truth. In a world where everyone broadcasts their wounds for sympathy, the one who stays silent commands a different kind of respect. It is not the silence of avoidance, it is the silence of mastery. People begin to notice. They may not know what you are enduring, but they see your calm, they see your results, and they feel the weight of your presence. That is power. That is Stoicism alive. At this stage, your choice is clear. Do you want to be pitied or respected? Do you want to be seen as fragile or unshakable? The one who talks endlessly about pain gains momentary comfort but loses control. The one who endures quietly gains no applause in the moment but earns freedom for a lifetime. True strength does not need to announce itself. True resilience does not seek validation. So when life strikes you down and your instinct is to share every bruise, pause, breathe. Ask yourself, is my energy better spent on telling or on building? If you guard your struggle, you guard your mind. If you guard your mind, you guard your destiny. The storms may rage, but in your silence, you will find clarity. And in your clarity, you will find the power to rise again. And this leads us naturally to the next key. Because if silence shields your struggles, what about the victories you've earned? Should you speak of them, or does wisdom demand restraint even there? That answer will test the very core of your discipline. Entering the 4th chapter, picture the moment you step through your front door after a long day, dripping from the storm outside, your jacket soaked through. You've just carried an old man home after fixing his broken bicycle in the rain. Your hands are stiff with cold, but your heart is warm. And yet, instead of sitting with that quiet satisfaction, you reach for your phone. One photo, one caption, and suddenly the simple act of kindness becomes something else entirely, content for an audience. At first, it feels harmless. The likes pour in, the comments praise your generosity, and for a moment you believe you've inspired others. But soon, something shifts. The next time you help a lost child find their way, the post doesn't get much attention. The praise is softer, the applause quieter. And in that silence, doubt creeps in. Did you help because it was right? Or did you help because the crowd was watching? This is the danger hidden in display. Goodness, once exposed, can be poisoned by ego. Here's where the Stoics cut to the truth. Marcus Aurelius reminded us, waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. Seneca warned that virtue loses its edge when it seeks an audience. When deeds are shown, the motive becomes suspect. What began as compassion risks turning into vanity. What should have freed your soul instead binds you to the fickle tides of approval. That is the hidden chain of praise. Now imagine 2 lives side by side. One man gives quietly. He pays for a stranger's meal, helps his neighbor, listens to a friend in despair, but never speaks of it. His actions vanish into the world like seeds scattered in secret soil. The other man does the same deeds but broadcasts them each time. Over the years, which one grows lighter, freer, untouchable? The one who carried no weight of performance, the one who gave without demanding an echo. Silence is freedom. Display is a trap. There is a deeper peace in doing good for its own sake, a quiet pride that doesn't depend on likes, applause, or recognition. When you let the deed exist on its own, untouched by others' eyes, it takes root inside you. You feel stronger, steadier, less swayed by the waves of comparison. No one can take it from you because no one else even knows. That is the kind of strength that cannot be shaken. I once knew a woman who volunteered every week at a shelter. She never spoke of it, never posted a single photo. Years later, when her colleagues discovered her work by accident, they were stunned. But for her, the surprise didn't matter. She had already been nourished by years of silent service. She wasn't feeding her ego, she was feeding her soul. This is where Stoic philosophy demands more of us. Do not hand your peace to the crowd. The applause that feels so sweet today becomes a hunger tomorrow, and once you begin chasing it, you will never stop. Better to free yourself from the cycle altogether. Do the good, then release it. Do the good, then walk away. True mastery is this: to act rightly without needing the world to notice, to choose kindness without needing proof, to give without asking for return. In that choice, you become immune to the rise and fall of opinion. You step beyond comparison. You discover that the real reward is not the echo of your deed, but the growth of your character. So the next time you feel the urge to share your good work, pause. Ask yourself, am I seeking to inspire or am I seeking to be admired? The first can be done quietly by living in a way that others feel without being told. The second leaves you hollow, forever waiting for someone else to confirm your worth. Do what is right because it is right. Let your deeds dissolve into the world without trace. For the truest mark of greatness is not how loudly you display your good, but how deeply it transforms you when no one else is watching. And that brings us to a harder truth still. If silence must protect your good deeds, what then of your dreams? Should they be shouted into the world or guarded in the dark until they are strong enough to face the storm? That is the next key we must step into. Now imagine a seed buried deep beneath the soil. No spotlight shines on it. No one applauds its struggle upward. And yet, in that hidden silence, it gathers strength. It shapes roots. It grows into something unshakable. Our deepest aspirations are no different. They don't need the noise of the crowd. They need the darkness, the solitude, the shelter of your silence. Share them too soon, and they are exposed to winds that can easily tear them apart. Doubts, envy, careless judgments. A fragile dream cannot endure the weight of many eyes. Think of the times you revealed a goal too early. Maybe you told a friend about your plan to change careers, or a relative about a project close to your heart. And what happened? Their skepticism slipped in like cold water on a small fire. Their words weren't always cruel, but they were heavy enough to make you question yourself. That flicker of hesitation, that sting of judgment, can be enough to smother the flame before it ever takes shape. Stoicism teaches us that strength often grows unseen. As Epictetus wrote, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. It takes courage to be underestimated while you quietly build. Here's where most people stumble. They think declaring their dreams loudly will give them motivation. They believe that by telling the world, they will hold themselves accountable. But the truth is sharper. Early praise creates a false high. A few words of encouragement trick the brain into believing the work is already done. Passion fades, momentum dies, and the dream, once alive, begins to slip away. Better to keep it hidden, better to build it silently than to waste it on premature applause. Picture an artist in a dim studio. No audience, no critics, only canvas, paint, and long hours of solitude. She experiments, fails, corrects, and starts again. And because no one is watching, she is free. Free to be bold, free to be wrong, free to keep going without fear of ridicule. That is how a masterpiece is born, not in the glare of attention, but in the stillness of persistence. Silence, in this way, is not absence. It is protection. Consider James Dyson. For 5 relentless years, he labored in his workshop, creating over 5,000 failed prototypes. People thought he was out of his mind. But Dyson didn't run to defend himself. He didn't flood the world with updates. He kept working, quietly, steadily. And when the world finally saw his machine, it was undeniable. Every doubt was silenced by results. His dream, hidden for years, emerged unstoppable. That is the power of a dream guarded by silence. So ask yourself, how many of your passions have withered because you let them out too soon? How many times have you allowed someone else's doubt to become your own? The Stoics would tell you this: your dream does not belong to their opinion. It belongs to your will, your discipline, your patience. Protect it like fire in a storm. Hide it until it burns strong enough to light the world without fear of being extinguished. True strength is not in loud declarations. It is in quiet preparation. It is in the nights you spend building when no one knows and no one praises. It is in the mornings you rise to continue, not because someone is watching, but because you refuse to stop. That kind of resilience cannot be stolen. That kind of vision cannot be broken. And when the time comes, when your work finally meets the light, it will speak for itself. No explanation, no defense, just proof. At this stage, your choice is simple but not easy. Will you guard your dream until it grows unshakable, or will you scatter it into the world too soon and watch it weaken? Remember, the world doesn't need to hear your intention. It needs to see your transformation. And when your dream stands strong, the silence that carried it will become the loudest voice of all. From here, let us move toward another form of silence, the one not used to hide or protect, but to act with precision. For sometimes the most powerful answer is not in revealing or proving, but in the strategic pause that unsettles everyone around you. This is where we uncover one of the most underestimated forms of power, the strength of strategic silence. Picture a crowded marketplace, everyone shouting over one another, each voice desperate to be heard. Amid the chaos, the person who stands still, who listens without rushing to speak, becomes the one everyone eventually notices. Why? Because silence in a noisy world is not absence, it is presence, it is control. Now imagine yourself at a dinner table on a restless evening, family gathered, plates half full, and suddenly the talk shifts to achievements, investments, the future. Voices rise, interruptions spark, tempers quicken, the air grows heavy with tension, each person determined to be right. In that storm of words, you resist the pull. You do not rush to defend yourself. You do not throw your voice into the fire. You watch, you wait, you let the noise burn itself out, and when the moment is ready, you speak, calm, steady, concise. That moment is not weakness. It is mastery. It is the art of choosing the right silence before the right word. The Stoics understood this long before our world was filled with endless chatter. Seneca warned that we are often enslaved by our own need to speak, revealing too much, too soon. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily to hold his peace, to guard his thoughts as one guards a fortress. Silence for them was not retreat. It was strategy. It was clarity sharpened by patience. Consider what happens when you withhold your words. Your plans remain yours alone. Your strategies stay hidden from those who would doubt, criticize, or sabotage them. Every silence becomes a shield, and every shield buys you space to adapt, to rethink, to move without interference. When you let results speak in place of explanations, your actions cannot be argued with. They stand undeniable. Here's a story that proves the point. A friend of mine once worked in a cutthroat office where colleagues battled daily for attention. Meetings turned into competitions, each voice louder than the last. He chose a different path. He spoke little, but when he did, his words were measured, precise. At first, they mocked him, calling him passive. But over time, his quiet presence unsettled them. His silence made them wonder what he was thinking, what he was planning. And when his projects finally succeeded, the impact was undeniable. He didn't win by shouting, he won by waiting. This is where silence becomes more than absence of speech. It becomes the sharpest observation. In listening, you notice what others miss. The tremor in a voice, the flicker of doubt in an eye, the unspoken motives behind casual remarks. Words deceive, gestures reveal. And only the silent observer can see both. But do not mistake strategic silence for avoidance. It is not cowardice, it is control. The silence of the Stoic is not an empty shell, but a weapon sharpened by discipline. It is the pause that allows emotions to cool, the space that prevents a careless remark, the restraint that turns potential conflict into clarity. In this way, silence is not escape, it is choice. The choice to act with intention rather than impulse. Think of a master swordsman. He does not swing wildly with every opening. He waits, he watches, and when the strike comes, it is decisive. Your words are no different. Scatter them recklessly, and they lose their edge. Hold them with care, and when they are spoken, they land with force. This is the discipline of silence. I remember another scene, this time at home. A father sits at the table while his children argue about grades. His wife is frustrated, his own name drawn into the fray. He feels the urge to defend, to shout, to end it, but instead he breathes, he listens, he lets the storm pass. And only when the room quiets does he speak, gently but firmly, restoring order with a few measured words. Later, his children will not remember the details of the argument. They will remember his calm. They will remember his silence. Strategic silence also builds respect. The one who does not rush to fill every gap commands attention when he finally speaks. In a world addicted to noise, restraint is rare, and what is rare is powerful. People lean in when silence is broken, waiting for what you will say. This is not manipulation. It is the natural weight of discipline. When you no longer need to prove yourself through constant words, you become unshakable. As the Stoics taught, peace is not the absence of conflict, but the mastery of oneself amid chaos. Preserving your silence is preserving your center. Amid gossip, you choose stillness. Amid arguments, you choose patience. Amid temptation to reveal, you choose discretion. Each choice is a victory. Each silence strengthens the fortress of your mind. At this stage, you must ask yourself, do you want to be remembered as the one who spoke the most, or the one whose silence carried the greatest weight? The first may win attention for a moment. The second wins respect that lasts. Silence is not emptiness. It is presence refined to its purest form. So hold your tongue when anger urges you to speak. Guard your plans when pride tempts you to reveal them. Let your silence work for you, not against you. And when the time is right, let your words fall like a stone into still water, measured, deliberate, leaving ripples that endure long after the noise fades. This is the power of strategic silence. It is the strength of restraint, the discipline of the watchful, the advantage of those who master themselves first. And if you can wield it, you will find yourself not just surviving the noise of the world, but rising above it. From here we turn to another silence, the silence that surrounds not what you plan or observe, but the victories you've already achieved. Because if silence can protect your strategies, what happens when it shields even your triumphs? That is the next step on this Stoic journey. Advancing to the 7th chapter, picture a craftsman alone in his workshop. The hours stretch long, the tools worn, the air filled with the rhythm of effort. No one is watching, no cameras record, and yet he carves and refines each detail as though the world depended on it. This is the truth of real achievement. It is not forged in applause. It is born in the silence of perseverance, where each small step forward strengthens the soul more than any compliment ever could. Now imagine the opposite. The endless scroll of social media, where every accomplishment is paraded for likes, where pride is measured by numbers on a screen. The rush of validation feels intoxicating, but the hangover comes quickly. Because when applause becomes your measure, silence feels like failure. You find yourself needing more, another post, another round of admiration. Soon, the work no longer matters. The recognition does. And that, the Stoics warn, is slavery disguised as success. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "It never ceases to amaze me. We all love ourselves more than other people, but care more about their opinion than our own." His words are a mirror for anyone who craves recognition. Why do we allow the fleeting judgments of others to outweigh the quiet certainty within? To the Stoic, success is not in being celebrated. It is in surpassing your own limits day after day, whether or not the world ever notices. Consider the story of Jiro Ono, the legendary sushi master of Tokyo. For decades, he devoted himself to the perfection of the smallest details, one slice of fish, one grain of rice, one dish at a time. His life was not lived for applause. The Michelin stars, the global recognition, even the documentary that made him famous were never his true prize. His pride lived in the discipline of surpassing yesterday's self, in the quiet dignity of steady growth. That is the essence of Stoic achievement, not noise, not spectacle, but mastery born from relentless devotion. Boasting about your achievements plants a poison in the soil. It breeds envy in others, resentment in some, suspicion in many. More dangerously, it breeds dependence in you. You become chained to external validation, forever repeating the cycle of proving, posting, pleasing. The balance of your soul is lost, tossed about by the storms of opinion. To hold your achievements quietly is not false modesty, it is strength. It is a refusal to let the world dictate your peace. Here's where the power of silence sharpens. When you don't talk about your accomplishments, you protect the most valuable thing you possess, your inner equilibrium. You no longer tremble at criticism or starve for praise. You stand steady in the storm, and your silence itself becomes a message, clearer and stronger than any boast. They see it in your presence. They see it in results that need no words. Picture again the artisan chiseling his work. No audience, no fanfare, only a standard he has set for himself. That is the highest form of pride, not the kind that shouts, but the kind that steadies. Silent pride is pure because it asks for nothing in return. Silent pride is unshakable because it depends on no one, and so the Stoic path points us inward. To measure success not by the hands that clap, but by the spirit that grows. To take satisfaction not in what is seen, but in what is mastered. To find joy in relentless progress rather than restless recognition. In this way, every step forward becomes its own reward. Every day of perseverance, its own victory. This is where freedom lives. When you stop searching for approval out there, you finally taste the real sweetness of achievement. It is calm, it is steady, it is enough. And then your silence, far from hiding your success, becomes the clearest evidence of it. Without a word, the world sees. Without a boast, they know. Because true success cannot be disguised. It radiates quietly, like light through stone. So hold back from the urge to display. Let your growth be your secret fire. Work until the results themselves silence every doubt. And when the temptation to announce yourself rises, remember this: greatness has no need for witnesses. From here, we turn to another kind of silence, not the silence around your achievements, but the silence you give to others. For the art of listening without interruption, without judgment, can change not only how others see you, but how deeply you connect with the world itself. Entering the 8th chapter, imagine sitting across from someone whose eyes betray a weight they do not put into words. Their hands fidget, their voice trembles slightly, but the story they speak is only half of what they carry. Most people miss it. Too eager to answer, too impatient to fill the silence. But the one who holds back, who listens with a calm and open presence, begins to see what lies underneath. That is where the real conversation begins. The art of listening in silence is not passive. It is not the stillness of a stone, but the attentiveness of a guard standing watch at night. It means opening yourself fully to the other, setting aside judgment, resisting the urge to prepare your reply while they speak. It means giving someone the rare gift of feeling understood. And when that happens, walls start to fall. A quiet trust forms. Respect takes root. Now imagine a manager named Mark. He believed that leadership was volume, talking often, giving orders, correcting quickly. But conflict kept flaring in his team, and the harder he pushed with words, the more division he created. One day, he tried something different. He sat with his team, and instead of speaking, he listened. Each person, one by one, shared their frustration, their perspective, their hidden fear. Mark did not interrupt. He did not argue. He let the silence do its work. By the end of that meeting, something shifted. The anger dissolved. Misunderstandings untangled. His team, once fractured, began to move as one. He had discovered what the Stoics knew long ago, that silence is not the absence of power, but its deepest form. Seneca once wrote, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so that we may listen more and talk less." His words cut through the noise of our time. Listening in silence does not diminish you. It enlarges you. It gives you insight others never find. When you listen intently, you notice what impatience always overlooks. The glance held a little too long, the pause before a confession, the fragile tremor of pain in an otherwise steady voice. These details are invisible to the talker, but luminous to the listener. Think of a conflict between friends. Harsh words already exchanged, anger heavy in the air. Both want to defend, both want to be heard. But one chooses silence, not as retreat, but as presence. He listens fully. He hears not just the words, but the hurt beneath them. And slowly, the other begins to soften. Because when a person feels heard, anger cannot last. Empathy takes its place. Silent listening, then, is not weakness. It is the most direct route to healing. Here's where the Stoic wisdom sharpens again. Marcus Aurelius urged himself daily to be patient, to allow others their moment, to remain calm even when wronged. The one who listens silently has already won half the battle, not over the other, but over himself. He refuses to be dragged by impulse. He chooses discipline instead, and in that discipline he discovers freedom. The truth is, most people do not listen. They wait for their turn to speak. But when you truly listen, without agenda, without hurry, you become rare. And what is rare is valued. People begin to trust you. They come to you not because you speak well, but because they feel safe in your silence. That is power of a different kind, quieter, but far more enduring. Picture again Mark with his team. In time, they grew not only more cooperative, but more loyal. His silence had taught them that their voices mattered, and in return, they gave him their respect. The Stoics would call this harmony, the kind that grows not from domination, but from understanding. Listening in silence is also strategy. It allows you to observe more deeply, to uncover motives hidden beneath words, to see opportunities others miss. In business, in family, in friendship, the silent observer holds the greatest advantage. He knows more because he has trained himself to hear what is not said. So remember this, when you choose silence in listening, you are not doing less. You are doing more. You are building bridges others cannot see. You are calming storms before they rise. You are learning truths hidden from those who speak too quickly. This is the strength of the Stoic listener, not loud, not obvious, but undeniable. At this stage, let the lesson settle. True power is not always in the voice that commands, but in the ear that understands. The world is filled with noise, but the one who listens quietly cuts through it all. And yet, if silence in listening gives you strength in the moment, what about the strength that comes from seeing far ahead? To not only hear the present clearly, but to hold a vision of the future that guides every step. That is where we now turn, the discipline of long-term vision, the foresight that sets you apart from the restless crowd. Entering the 9th chapter, imagine a farmer standing in his field at the end of autumn. The soil is cold, the sky grey, and nothing yet stirs beneath the earth. To a passerby, his work looks futile, but he knows what the eye cannot see. The seeds he planted are sleeping, gathering strength for the season ahead. His faith is not in today's emptiness, but in tomorrow's harvest. This is the essence of long-term vision, the strength to believe in what is not yet visible, the discipline to act now for rewards that may come years later. Look around at the pace of the world today. Everyone is rushing, chasing quick wins, clinging to fleeting applause. A new trend rises, and millions flock to it. Another fades, and they scatter again, restless, afraid of being left behind. In this chaos, the one who holds steady, who thinks in decades instead of days, becomes rare. And what is rare commands power. Stoicism teaches us that life is not about the spark that dazzles for a moment, but the flame that endures through storm after storm. Here's where the danger lies. If you live only for today, you sell your future for scraps of comfort. A compliment here, a thrill there, an illusion of progress that vanishes with the next sunrise. But when your heart is set on the long horizon, your choices deepen, your actions carry weight. You are no longer tossed about by each wave, because your eyes are fixed on the shore you mean to reach. Consider Warren Buffett. For nearly his entire life, he has followed one principle: long-term investing. While others panic at market swings, chasing short-term profits, he remains calm. He knows that real wealth, like real character, cannot be built overnight. Anyone can get rich slowly, he has said, but no one gets rich quickly and stays rich for long. His fortune is not just money, it is the discipline of patience, the mastery of resisting temptation when everyone else is blinded by it. That is the fruit of long-term vision. Marcus Aurelius lived by the same principle. Each morning, he reminded himself that life is not a race to immediate gratification, but a path of steady endurance. Don't dream of what you don't have, he wrote, but count the blessings you do possess, and think how you would crave them if they weren't yours. His wisdom was not about clutching at today's pleasures, but about recognizing the slow, lasting value of what truly matters. The Stoic sees beyond the noise of now into the stillness of what endures. Think of your own life. How many times have you chased the quick fix only to find yourself back where you started? A crash diet, a shortcut in work, a sudden burst of effort that dies after a week. Compare that to the quiet discipline of small, steady actions. A page read daily becomes a library in a decade. A coin saved each day becomes a fortune in years. 10 minutes of focused practice becomes mastery in time. The world rewards those who wait, not with empty promises, but with real transformation. Here's a story. A young man I once knew wanted everything fast. Fast wealth, fast recognition, fast results. He jumped from one scheme to another, chasing the high of quick success. And yes, at times he tasted it, but it slipped through his fingers just as quickly. He burned out, bitter and exhausted, always back at zero. Another friend, quieter, less noticed, chose differently. He studied slowly, invested carefully, worked with patience. Years later, the first man envied him, wondering how he had surpassed him without fanfare. The answer was simple: long-term vision. The second man built while the first man only chased, and this is where resilience is forged. Life will test you, storms will come, temptations will beckon with their glittering shortcuts. But the one who has planted his mind in long-term vision does not flinch. He endures. He adapts. He continues forward because he knows the harvest does not come in days, but in seasons. He is not dazzled by the applause of now, because he's building for a tomorrow that applause cannot touch. At this stage, the question is simple. Do you want to be the spark that vanishes, or the flame that endures? The Stoics leave no doubt. Every great achievement, whether a strong character, a meaningful life, or even lasting influence, is built not on bursts of frenzy, but on years of patience, persistence, and an unwavering will. So hold fast to your vision. Think in decades, not in days. Build slowly, but build surely. When you fix your eyes on the horizon and walk with discipline, storms cannot move you. You pass through them with confidence, knowing where you are headed. And when the crowd looks back, wondering how you went so far, you will know the answer. It was not luck. It was vision. From here, we move into the quiet strength of solitude, the place where vision is refined, where the noise of the world falls away and the soul finally hears itself clearly. Moving into the 10th chapter, imagine walking away from the noise of a crowded street and stepping into a quiet garden. The world is still humming behind you, but here, for the first time in days, you can hear your own breath. The silence feels heavy at first, almost uncomfortable, but slowly it shifts into something else: relief, clarity. Solitude is not emptiness, it is refuge. There are moments in life when stepping back is the only way forward, not because you are weak, but because you need to hear the voice within that is drowned out by the clamor of the crowd. Every day we wear masks. We act strong when we feel tired. We prove ourselves even when no one is asking. We chase recognition that leaves us emptier each time. But in solitude, all of that falls away. You strip off the armor. You sit with your true self. And only then do you begin to ask the questions that matter. What do I actually want? Am I living by my own ideals, or am I only reacting to the expectations of others? Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul." He knew what the world often forgets, that solitude is not escape, but return. A return to the center. A return to the place no one else can enter or destroy. The world will always try to shape you, to tell you who you should be, to pull you into its endless noise. But when you choose solitude, you reclaim the ground that belongs only to you. Think of Anna. She had just faced a bitter failure at work, criticism from her boss, whispers from colleagues, and the crushing weight of disappointment. Panic urged her to act fast, to prove herself immediately, to silence the doubt by any means necessary. But instead of rushing, she stepped back. She took days in solitude, writing, reflecting, breathing. And in that space, her emotions calmed, her anger softened, her fear lost its grip. When she finally returned, she wasn't desperate anymore. She was clear. Her next step wasn't driven by panic, but by wisdom. That is the gift solitude gives, the power to pause until clarity rises. Here's where the Stoic strength lies. Time alone is not wasted time. It is the forge where resilience is hammered. It is the sanctuary where emotional wounds abound. In solitude, you discover that the storms outside cannot touch the calm you cultivate within. You breathe deeper. You regain strength. And when you walk back into the world, you do so not as someone defined by it, but as someone who carries their own center wherever they go. But solitude is not easy. It requires courage to face yourself without distraction. It requires patience to sit with questions that don't have quick answers. It requires trust that silence can heal more than constant noise ever could. Yet those who choose it find themselves sharper, steadier, less shaken by the chaos around them. While others break under the weight of pressure, the one who has learned the refuge of solitude walks forward stronger. This is not about running from responsibility. It's about returning with greater strength to fulfill it. It's about stepping back to see the whole battlefield before choosing your move. The retreat is not surrender. It is strategy. The stillness is not idleness. It is preparation. The silence is not absence. It is presence at its deepest level. At this stage, the lesson is clear. Solitude is the refuge where you remove the noise of the world, listen to your soul, and recover the strength to act wisely. And when you have found that quiet, the next question arises. Once you are ready to move again, how do you ensure that your action is guided not by impulse, but by wisdom itself? That is where our journey now leads, the discipline of choosing wisely when the world demands haste. Advancing to the 11th chapter, picture a river after a heavy rain. The current is wild, crashing against rocks, sweeping away branches, carrying with it everything in its path. Now imagine trying to cross it in that moment. You would be pulled under, lost in the chaos. But wait a day. Let the waters settle, and the same river becomes calm enough to walk through. This is the difference between rushing in with impulse and moving forward with wisdom. The world celebrates speed, but the Stoic celebrates clarity. We live in an age that rewards instant reaction. A message arrives, you feel the urge to reply immediately. Someone insults you, you burn to respond. A fleeting opportunity appears, you panic, afraid of missing out. And yet, how often do these hurried choices lead to regret? Anger makes you speak words that cut deeper than you intended. Anxiety keeps you frozen when courage was needed. Even joy, if left unchecked, can push you to leap into decisions that crumble once the excitement fades. Emotions, powerful as they are a double-edged sword. They can move you, but they can just as easily undo you. Here's where wisdom becomes your shield. The Stoics understood that mastery is not about denying emotion, but about not letting it rule your hand. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." Such simplicity requires pause. It requires the space to ask, what is temporary and what is lasting? Will this choice bring me closer to the person I want to become, or further away? That pause is where wisdom lives. I once knew a man whose temper always got the better of him. At work, one careless remark from a colleague would ignite him, and he'd snap back, only to spend days repairing the damage. One day, he chose differently. He felt the fire rising, but instead of answering, he paused. He breathed. He let the silence stretch. And when he finally spoke, his words were calm, measured, undeniable. That single pause not only saved his reputation, it earned him respect. His silence had more force than his anger ever did. The Stoics teach us that reason must sit above emotion. Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." To act with wisdom is to choose response over reaction. It is to slow the pace of your mind until clarity arrives. The impatient man lunges forward, hoping to win by speed. The wise man waits until he sees the full field, then moves with precision. One stumbles quickly, the other advances far. Think of an archer. He does not loose the arrow at the first sight of the target. He steadies his breath. He adjusts his aim. Only then does he release, and when he does, the shot lands true. Life is no different. To rush is to miss. To pause is to strike with purpose. Here's the strength most overlook. Wisdom in action is not flashy. It does not draw attention like impulsive outbursts or reckless risks. It moves quietly, steadily, without drama, and yet over years it builds a life with fewer regrets, stronger foundations, and deeper fulfillment. Others chase quick rewards and burn out. The wise endure. And endurance, in the end, outpaces haste. At this stage, ask yourself, how many mistakes in your life were born from rushing, from speaking too soon, from acting before thinking? And how many victories were born from patience, from pausing long enough to see clearly? The Stoics knew this truth. Real strength is not in the burst of excitement, but in the steady power of calm persistence. So the next time life demands that you rush, resist, hold back, breathe. Ask the hard question, is this choice aligned with the person I want to become? If not, wait. If yes, then move with full conviction. This is the discipline of wisdom, not speed, but clarity, not noise, but precision, not frenzy, but direction. And remember, those who master themselves in this way will go farther than those who simply try to stand out. They will surpass not by noise, but by steadiness, not by chasing, but by choosing. And in that quiet mastery, they will discover what few ever find: true control over their own lives. From here, our journey leads to the final key, one that transforms everything: the power of radical acceptance. For what happens when life throws you into storms you cannot control? When every effort fails and resistance only deepens the pain? The answer lies not in fighting harder, but in mastering the art of acceptance. Entering the 12th chapter, imagine standing in the middle of a storm. The rain lashes, the wind roars, and no matter how tightly you grip the wheel, the ship won't obey. You fight, you curse, you rage at the sea, but the waves don't care. The more you resist, the more exhausted you become, until your strength drains into the depths. Life, at times, feels exactly like this. You work tirelessly, but your effort is dismissed. You love with all you have, but your heart is left unanswered. You plan each step carefully, yet the ground crumbles beneath you. In those moments, frustration claws at your chest. Anger rises, confusion clouds the mind, a sense of injustice gnaws at your soul. You ask, why me? Why now? Why, after everything I've done, does this happen? And yet the Stoics tell us this is the crossroads. Marcus Aurelius called it the point where reason must decide. Will you keep fighting what cannot be moved, or will you protect your peace by accepting what is beyond you? Radical acceptance does not mean surrender. It does not mean giving up. It is not the voice that says I quit. It is the steady gaze that says, this I cannot change, but this I will endure. This belongs to fate, but my response belongs to me. Epictetus taught that freedom begins when we distinguish between what is within our control and what is not. You cannot control the words of others. You cannot control their choices, their betrayals, their indifference. But you can control your response. You can hold your calm. You can choose your next step. Let me tell you a story. A friend of mine gave years of his life to a company, pouring in loyalty, sacrifice, and energy. One day, with a shift in upper management, he was dismissed. No warning, no reason that honored his effort. Fury consumed him at first. He felt betrayed, humiliated, discarded. But instead of letting the fire burn him to ashes, he stepped away. For days, he wrote in his journal, he let the anger pour onto the page instead of into the world. And then, slowly, clarity returned. He couldn't change the decision, but he could change his stance. 6 months later, he built his own business using the very skills that had been overlooked. For the first time in his life, he felt free, not because the world had grown kinder, but because he had grown stronger. This is the power of radical acceptance. When you stop fighting what is not yours to carry, you reclaim the energy that was bleeding into resistance. You protect your mind from drowning in bitterness. You give yourself the space to breathe, to think, to act with clarity instead of impulse. The world does not become less harsh, but you become less fragile. The storm still rages, but now you stand like the mountain within it. Seneca once said, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." How true those words become when we resist endlessly. We replay the injustice. We argue with what has already happened. We bleed ourselves dry with thoughts of how it should have been. Acceptance cuts that chain. It does not erase the pain, but it stops you from chaining yourself to it forever. You grieve, you learn, and then you move. Here's where the real strength lies. Anyone can shout at the storm. Few can stand still within it. Anyone can waste their soul trying to control the uncontrollable. Few can turn inward, hold their calm, and keep walking. Radical acceptance is not weakness. It is the ultimate form of power, because it returns all authority back to where it belongs, within you. At this stage, you must ask yourself, what burdens are you carrying that were never yours to hold? Whose approval, whose betrayal, whose chaos have you mistaken for your responsibility? Lay them down. They are not yours. Your task is simpler and harder. To guard your mind, to choose your response, to act with reason when the world is unreasonable. When you practice radical acceptance, you stop wasting energy on walls that will never move. You invest that strength instead into building what can stand. You free yourself from the chains of resentment. You sharpen your focus for what truly matters. You rise, not because life has spared you, but because you have learned to endure it with unshakable calm. So let the storm come. Do not curse it. Do not beg it to change. Stand within it and remember, your peace is yours. Your mind is yours. Your next step is yours. The world may not bend to you, but you can bend yourself without breaking. That is the art of acceptance. That is the mark of true Stoic strength. And now, with these 12 keys in your hands, the question is no longer what the world will throw at you, but how you will meet it. Will you scatter your energy in resistance, or will you rise with calm, clarity, and resolve? The choice, as always, is yours. You now carry principles that can steady the mind and strengthen the spirit. But knowing the path is not the same as walking it. Philosophy, no matter how profound, is only words until it is lived. The real test begins when these ideas leave the page and enter your choices, your habits, your daily battles. This is where resilience turns into discipline, where silence becomes strategy, and where wisdom is no longer theory, but action. The time has come to test them. Advancing into the next stage of this journey, picture a battlefield after the clash has ended. The dust still hangs in the air, the ground is littered with fragments, and the instinct is to keep swinging, to prove you survived. Yet the real strength is not in the last strike. It is in what you choose to do when the fighting stops. Many believe resilience ends with survival, but the Stoics knew that is only the beginning. Survival is a pause. Transformation begins in what follows. Now, imagine this. You faced a storm at work, your reputation questioned, your worth doubted. You emerge from it bruised, but standing. In that moment, most people rush to justify, to explain, to parade their endurance before others. But silence after struggle is not emptiness, it is strategy. Seneca reminded us that life is not about collecting opinions, but about guarding time and energy. The question is not, how do I make them see, but what do I build next? The transition from enduring pain to using it is the very art that separates those who remain wounded from those who rise. Think of the blacksmith. The strike of the hammer is not the end. The glow of the blade is not its final form. It is only after the fire that the cooling, shaping, sharpening must take place. Endurance without rebuilding is unfinished work. The same is true for us. Enduring hardship is the raw material. Transforming it into discipline, focus, and action, that is mastery. Here's where most falter. They confuse surviving with winning. They mistake applause for progress. But look closer. Survival without reflection becomes bitterness. Applause without growth becomes addiction. To move forward, you must take the fragments left behind and shape them into something stronger. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." His words demand action beyond the storm. The event is done. What you do with your mind now is what defines you. I recall the story of a woman who lost her job unjustly. At first, she wept. Then she raged. She spent weeks telling anyone who would listen about the unfairness. Yet nothing changed. Her anger exhausted her. Her words gained her pity, but no power. Then came the shift. She chose to stop repeating her pain and start studying. She learned new skills in silence, built a small freelance practice, and within a year created a career freer than the one she had lost. The injustice was real, but her transformation was stronger. This is the practice of turning scars into fuel. Every wound carries a choice. Do you let it define your bitterness, or do you make it the proof of your endurance? Epictetus taught that trials are not curses but tests. He said, "Difficulties show what men are, not by the pain itself, but by what is forged in its fire." A man who breaks under the weight of hardship is not shamed for falling. He is shamed for refusing to rise different than before. Let us step into the modern battlefield, social media. People broadcast their hardships for sympathy, their survival for validation. For a moment, they are comforted, but soon the silence after applause feels unbearable, and they must share again. In this cycle, they never grow, they only repeat. Stoicism offers a harder but truer path. Hold your silence, not as suppression but as cultivation. Endure, yes, but then transform. Use the pause after pain not to seek approval, but to sharpen your next step. Picture a seed split open in the soil. The break looks like destruction, but it is the beginning of growth. Without that fracture, nothing new could emerge. Your hardships are no different. Every fracture is a chance for roots. Every split is a beginning, not an end. But only if you refuse to waste the moment, clinging to what is gone. At this stage, the lesson is sharper. Survival is only the doorway. The true path is in what you build beyond it. You must rise with something the storm could not take. Your clarity, your will, your unshakable discipline. Let your scars become reminders, not of where you broke, but of where you chose to rebuild. Let your silence after pain become the forge where resilience is hammered into strength. Ask yourself, the last time you endured hardship, what did you create afterward? Did you leave with only stories of unfairness, or with new weapons shaped by the fire? Your answer determines whether you merely survive life or truly surpass it. And so, as we close this stage, remember this truth. Strength is not in saying, "I endured." Strength is in showing, silently but unmistakably, "I transformed." From here we move to another discipline of the Stoic path: how to guard your focus from the endless distractions of a restless world, and in doing so, build the kind of concentration that makes progress inevitable. Moving into the next chapter, imagine walking into a crowded marketplace at dawn. The stalls are overflowing with colors. Voices clash in every direction, each vendor shouting to claim attention. The noise is overwhelming, and yet, in that chaos, a single figure moves differently. He does not rush. He does not shout. His eyes are steady, his pace measured, as if he carries his own silence like armor. This is the man who has mastered his focus, who has learned not to be dragged by every call, every distraction. In a world addicted to noise, his calm becomes his edge. Now ask yourself, how often do you scatter your energy? One moment scrolling through endless feeds, another lost in arguments that change nothing, then another chasing tasks that aren't even yours to carry. By the end of the day, you are drained, not because you worked too hard, but because you gave yourself away in pieces. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it." He was reminding us that our true exhaustion rarely comes from the world itself. It comes from the way we let the world invade our minds. Picture a young man sitting at his desk, trying to build his future. His phone buzzes, a notification calls, his friend texts, the news screams another headline. He answers them all. Minutes dissolve, then hours, and when the day's gone, he wonders why nothing has moved forward. Contrast that with another man who decides differently. He sets his phone aside, closes the door, guards his attention as though it were treasure. While the world shouts outside, he enters a state of deep work, carving progress from silence. Weeks later, his results speak so loudly that the world finally notices him, not because he chased attention, but because he built something undeniable. This is the Stoic discipline of guarding focus. Epictetus warned that freedom is impossible if you hand control of your mind to every passing impulse. To live freely, you must first live with restraint. That means learning to say no, not only to people, but to distractions, to cravings, to the 1,000 trivial demands that beg for your time. Each no is not deprivation, it is preservation. It is the act of keeping your power intact. Think of it like a warrior entering battle. His strength is not infinite. Every strike must count. If he wastes his blade on shadows, he will have nothing left when the real enemy appears. Your focus is the same. Waste it on gossip, on arguments, on endless consumption, and when the real test arrives, you will be empty. But if you train your focus, guard it, sharpen it daily, you will have the clarity and strength to cut through what matters most. Here's where the modern world deceives us. It sells distraction as connection, busyness as success. People boast of multitasking, of juggling 1,000 things at once, but the truth is simple. Divided focus is weakened focus. Seneca warned long ago, to be everywhere is to be nowhere. The more scattered you are, the less you live. Life slips away not in grand failures, but in small leaks of attention that go unnoticed until nothing remains. Consider the story of a woman building her craft in secret. Her peers spent hours debating trends, sharing every thought online, scattering their attention to be seen. She did the opposite. Each morning she carved 2 hours of silence for her work. No phone, no interruptions, just discipline. For months, no one noticed her. She was absent from the noise, but when her work was ready, it stunned even those who had ignored her. While others were busy being visible, she had been busy becoming excellent. Her silence became her power. And this is where the Stoic lesson pierces deepest. Guarding your focus is not just about efficiency. It is about integrity. When you give yourself to every distraction, you are saying, "My time is worthless." When you protect your focus, you are saying, "My life is mine." That choice shapes everything. It determines whether you live as the master of your time or as the slave of the world's demands. At this stage, ask yourself honestly, where is your focus leaking away? Which conversations, which habits, which trivialities steal from your future? And more importantly, what would your life look like if you redirected that energy into what truly mattered? Imagine the strength, the clarity, the mastery you would build if even half the hours lost to distraction were claimed back for growth. Here's the truth most fear to face. Greatness is not loud. It is not frantic. It is quiet, deliberate, and fiercely guarded. Every strong soul you admire was forged not in chaos, but in focus. They chose silence when others shouted. They chose discipline when others scattered. And because of that, they built lives that stand while others crumble. So the next time the world pulls at you with 1,000 voices, remember the man in the marketplace. He does not rush. He does not shout. He walks with focus, and in that focus lies his strength. Guard your attention as you would guard your life, because in the end, they are the same. And with that, we step further into this path. If guarding focus protects your energy, what about the storms inside, the restless emotions that pull you off course even when the outside world is silent? That is where we now turn. The art of mastering the inner battlefield. Entering the next stage, imagine a runner collapsing on the track, his chest heaving, the crowd leaning forward in silence. Some wait to see if he'll rise, others whisper that he's finished. That moment, the silence after a fall, is one we all know. At work, in relationships, in life's endless race, there are times when you stumble under the eyes of others. And the temptation, heavy as stone, is to shout your pain, to explain yourself, to prove that you are still standing. But here is where the Stoics cut to the truth. The storm of words will not lift you. Only your quiet endurance will. Now ask yourself, what happens when your suffering, once confessed too widely, becomes a weapon in someone else's hand? One careless remark shared in frustration can return later as judgment. A complaint voiced in weakness can become the label they stick to you forever. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." His words are a blade cutting through the fog. To speak less of your pain and to show more of your strength is not silence in fear, it is silence in power. I remember the story of a man who built his business from nothing. Nights were sleepless, debts piled high, failures came one after another. He could have posted every hardship, begged for pity, gathered sympathy from strangers. Instead, he stayed quiet. He carried his burden alone and poured his energy into creating solutions. Years later, when success finally came, no one remembered the nights of despair. What they saw was the outcome, and the outcome spoke more clearly than any cry for comfort ever could. Contrast him with another who complained loudly at every obstacle. He spoke of his struggles before he had overcome them, seeking recognition for battles not yet won. People listened at first, but soon their respect thinned. His words built a wall of doubt around him, a wall he could never climb. This is the trap of overexposure. The more you speak of your pain, the more you hand power to others, and the less you hold within yourself. Here is the paradox. We crave connection, yet in our craving, we often overshare. Social media thrives on it. Every hardship broadcast, every bruise displayed, every wound turned into content. For a moment, you feel seen, but soon you become dependent on the reaction. Comfort is fleeting, and silence becomes unbearable, so you share again. In this cycle, growth halts. You remain the victim of your own story instead of its author. The Stoic way offers a harder path. To endure without broadcasting. To bear your suffering not in secret shame, but in deliberate silence. Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. Your silence is not suppression, it is mastery. It is the choice to keep your energy where it belongs. In rebuilding, in redirecting, in rising again." Think of a soldier on the field, wounded but alive. If he wastes his strength shouting his pain, he has none left to fight. But if he steadies his breath, tends to his wound, and moves forward with focus, he turns survival into triumph. In the same way, your silence after struggle is not denial. It is preservation. It is the shield that guards your mind until your next move is ready. A professional athlete once faced brutal criticism after a disastrous season. Headlines mocked him. Fans turned their backs. His instinct was to respond, to defend himself. But instead, he said nothing. He trained, refined, worked in the shadows. When the next season came, his performance silenced every critic more effectively than any statement ever could. His results became the loudest voice in the room. So here is the question. Do you want to be pitied, or do you want to be respected? Do you want to be known for your words of suffering, or for the quiet resilience that carried you through? The Stoics remind us, dignity does not beg, strength does not announce itself. It simply stands. At this stage, remember that every struggle is a test, not just of your endurance, but of your discipline. You can choose to narrate your pain endlessly, or you can choose to transform it in silence. One path gains you sympathy for a moment, the other earns you freedom for a lifetime. So let your scars be proof, not of where you broke, but of where you rebuilt. Let your silence after hardship become your greatest strategy. When others look at you, let them see not the story of your pain, but the evidence of your transformation. If this message speaks to you, take a moment, subscribe, and drop one word in the comments: strength. Sometimes one word is enough to remind you of what you are becoming. And from here, we take another step. If silence can shield your struggles, what about your triumphs? Should your victories be paraded before the world? Or does true mastery demand that even success be held with restraint? That is the next question we must confront. Advancing to the next chapter, picture a mountain path after heavy rain. The trail is slick, stones loosen under your feet, and every step feels uncertain. You can't control the weather, you can't move the rocks, but you can decide how to place your foot, how to hold your balance, how to keep moving. This is where the real battle begins, not against the world outside, but against the storms inside that threaten to unseat you at every step. Now imagine the pull of anger rising when someone cuts you down, the weight of anxiety before a risk, the surge of excitement that clouds your judgment when an opportunity seems too good to be true. These are the inner storms, invisible but relentless. And while the world might see only your face, inside you are fighting for control. Most people surrender. They react without thinking, carried away by impulse. But the Stoic sees this moment differently. Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." That reaction, chosen or unchosen, is the battlefield of self-mastery. Consider the story of a young leader faced with betrayal from someone close. Rage tempted him to lash out, to expose and humiliate the betrayer publicly, but he stopped. He wrote down his anger in private, read Marcus Aurelius that night, and asked himself, "Will this action bring me closer to the person I want to become?" The answer was no. He stayed silent, acted calmly, and let time reveal the truth. His restraint not only saved his reputation, but deepened the respect others held for him. By mastering the inner storm, he won without ever lifting a hand. Here's the lesson too many ignore. Self-control is not suppression, it is redirection. The Stoics never preached denial of emotion. They taught mastery of it. Anger can be fuel if guided. Fear can be caution if understood. Excitement can be momentum if anchored. But unchecked, each one is poison. Seneca warned that anger, left unmastered, is like falling into temporary madness. To feel it is human. To be ruled by it is slavery. Think of the soldier before a battle. His heart pounds, his hands sweat, his body trembles. Fear is natural, but if he lets it consume him, he cannot hold the sword steady. If instead he channels it, fear sharpens his senses, steadies his breath, keeps him alive. This is the Stoic way, to turn the storm into strength rather than letting it wreck you. In our world, the temptations are constant. A harsh comment on social media, a setback at work, a delay in plans that makes you restless. Each moment whispers, react now. Prove yourself, defend your pride. But what if you paused? What if, instead of spilling your energy into instant reactions, you held it, studied it, redirected it? The one who can master that pause carries an advantage others will never touch. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself in his meditations, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." This was not comfort, it was command. Because when you realize that your true enemy is never the insult, the delay, or the chaos outside, but always the storm within, you begin to fight where victory is possible. Let me give you a modern story. A professional athlete once faced crushing criticism after a poor performance. The press tore him apart. Fans turned on him. He wanted to respond, to fight back, to defend. But instead, he trained in silence. For weeks, he said nothing. When the next season came, his performance silenced every critic more effectively than any words could have. His focus was not wasted on the noise, it was channeled into growth. That is inner mastery. That is Stoicism alive. At this stage, ask yourself, how many times have you given away your strength by reacting too soon? How many moments of anger left you regretting words you could not take back? How many fears stopped you before you even tried? These storms will never vanish, but you can learn to stand inside them, unshaken. Here's the truth that liberates. Emotions are not the enemy. Your lack of control is. The fire is not evil, it is your choice whether to burn or to forge with it. And every time you resist the urge to react blindly, you grow stronger, calmer, freer. Each pause is a victory, each restraint is a step closer to mastery. So remember this, the storms within will never stop coming, but you are not helpless before them. You are the sailor who can trim the sails, the archer who can wait for the wind to still, the warrior who can hold his blade until the strike will land true. When you master your inner battlefield, you cannot be defeated, because no enemy outside is stronger than the one you have already overcome within. And from here, the question deepens. If you can control your emotions, what about your perspective itself? How do you train your eyes to see opportunity where others see only failure, to turn obstacles into stepping stones? That is the next truth we must step into, the discipline of perception. Moving into the next stage of this journey, imagine standing before a wall so high it seems impossible to climb. Most would turn away, convinced that the obstacle has ended the path. But a few, with steadier eyes, see something else. They notice a handhold, a crack, a stone that can be stepped on. Where others see an end, they see a beginning. This is the quiet art of perception. The way you choose to see determines the way you choose to act. Now imagine being struck by failure. A job lost, a relationship broken, a plan collapsing in front of you. The instinct is to see only ruin, to call it defeat, to feel life has taken from you something it will never return. Yet what if, hidden inside that collapse, there is a seed? A seed of a better path. A seed of growth you could never have known otherwise. Seneca once wrote, "Difficulties strengthen the mind, as labor does the body. What feels like punishment is often preparation. What looks like loss can become your training ground." Think of Thomas Edison, thousands of failed attempts at creating the light bulb. Each one, through the eyes of most, was disaster after disaster. But through his eyes, each failure was a step forward, each mistake a clue. He once said, "I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work." His vision was not of ruin, but of refinement. The same setback seen differently becomes either a weight or a ladder. Perception decides. Here's the Stoic way. The world is not cruel or kind. It simply is. You are the one who gives it color. A storm comes. One man curses the rain, another thanks it for watering the crops. The event is the same. The meaning is not. Epictetus taught, "It's not what happens to you, but how you interpret it." This is not empty comfort, it is power. Because if you can master your perception, no blow can truly defeat you. Consider the story of a young woman who was denied admission to her dream school. At first, she felt broken, convinced her life had ended before it began. For months, she carried shame and despair. But one day she asked herself, "What can this teach me? Where can this redirect me?" She applied elsewhere, discovered a new program, and in time, found her true calling, something she would have never pursued without that rejection. Years later, she saw that what felt like life's cruelty was actually life's correction. Her vision had to break before it could expand. This is where perception transforms suffering into strength. The Stoics remind us, pain itself is not the enemy. It is the meaning we attach to it that either destroys or builds us. Marcus Aurelius faced wars, betrayal, disease, and constant loss. Yet in his meditations he wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." These words are not poetry, they are battle-tested truth. He understood that the wall before you is not blocking your life, it is shaping it. Here's the danger when you fail to train perception. You become a prisoner of events. Every insult cuts too deep. Every loss feels final. Every obstacle appears immovable. You live reacting instead of responding, and your spirit, instead of being free, is shackled by circumstance. But when you reclaim your eyes, when you choose to look at the storm and say, "This too will serve me," you take back your power. Let me paint another picture. A man loses his job. He curses his boss, blames the economy, feels humiliated. Another man loses his job. He sees a chance to build the business he always dreamed of, to sharpen the skills he had been neglecting, to become something more than a title. The same event, two stories. Which one do you want to live? Here's the sharper truth. You cannot control the blows of fate, but you can always control your lens. And the one who holds that lens steady will always rise. Because when you can turn obstacles into opportunities, pain into power, rejection into redirection, you become untouchable. Ask yourself now, how many moments in your life did you call tragedy, only to later see them as blessings in disguise? How many setbacks forced you to grow, to adapt, to become someone stronger than you would have been without them? That is perception at work. That is stoicism alive in the raw fabric of your story. So remember this, the eye can be trained just as much as the hand or the mind. Train it to see beyond the immediate. Train it to find strength in the struggle. Train it to notice not just the wall, but the cracks that let you climb. When you do, life no longer feels like something happening to you. It becomes something happening for you. At this stage, the choice is sharp. You can keep seeing the world through the lens of defeat, or you can sharpen your vision until every obstacle becomes a teacher. The first will leave you bitter. The second will leave you unshakable, and as the Stoics knew, resilience is not just surviving, it is perceiving rightly. From here, let us move deeper still, for once your perception is trained, the next step is to anchor it with discipline, because seeing clearly is only the beginning. To live it daily, you must hold the line, again and again, when the world tempts you to falter. Entering this chapter, picture a mosaic laid out on the ground. Each tile looks ordinary, even dull, but placed with care it reveals a design that only patience can uncover. But when placed with care, one beside another, a pattern emerges, a unity far greater than the sum of its parts. Life is no different. You may hold wisdom in one hand, discipline in the other, and perspective in your mind, but unless they connect, they remain fragments. Integration is the art of weaving everything into one fabric, so that your life itself becomes the message. Now imagine someone who trains their body fiercely but neglects their mind. Another who studies deeply but refuses discipline. A third who speaks of calm but erupts at the slightest provocation. Each has a piece of the puzzle, but the picture is broken. Integration means no piece is left isolated. It means your thoughts, words, and actions flow in the same direction. As Marcus Aurelius said, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one. To be whole is greater than to be skilled in parts." I recall a man who lived two lives. At work, he was patient, calm, disciplined. At home, he was harsh, irritable, careless. Over time, the cracks tore him apart. His colleagues admired him, but his family feared him. He could not carry two selves forever. When the collapse came, it was brutal. Only when he began integrating, treating his children with the same patience he gave his co-workers, showing discipline in his personal habits as he did in business, did he find peace. Wholeness became his strength. Here's the Stoic truth. The world tempts you to live in fragments, to wear masks for each occasion, to be different people in different rooms. But integrity, the very root of integration, means to be one. Seneca wrote, "A good character, once established, is not easily overthrown. A unified life cannot be fractured by gossip, by failure, by shifting opinion, because it is not built on performance, it is built on principle. Think of a tree, its branches spread wide, reaching in every direction, yet all draw strength from the same trunk, the same roots. That is what integration feels like. Your choices, no matter how different, feed from the same values. Your reactions, no matter how tested, reflect the same discipline. You don't need to pretend, because your inside and outside finally match. That is where power resides, not in acting well occasionally, but in being whole consistently. Let's bring this down to practice. Say you believe in patience. Integration means you practice it not only when it is easy, but especially when it is costly, when the line is long, when the insult is sharp, when the delay is crushing. Say you value honesty. Integration means you don't shade the truth at work while demanding loyalty at home. It is all connected, and every break weakens the whole. Here's a modern example. Athletes often speak of the zone, a state where mind, body, and spirit align. They perform effortlessly because nothing within them is at war. Their practice, their belief, their discipline, all flow together. Life outside the arena is the same. When your daily habits echo your deepest values, and your values echo in your words, you move through life with a rare fluidity. Nothing feels wasted, nothing feels divided. But beware, disintegration is subtle. It begins when you excuse one small betrayal of your values, telling yourself it's just once. Soon, another follows, then another. Before long, you wear a mask so often you forget the face beneath it. And in that forgetting, your peace crumbles. Epictetus warned his students, "First say to yourself what you would be, then do what you have to do." If you know who you wish to be, let every action, no matter how small, answer to that decision. Ask yourself now, where are the cracks in your life? Do you speak of strength but avoid discomfort? Do you speak of love but neglect patience? Do you speak of freedom but live enslaved by habits you will not break? The cracks can be healed, but only if you begin to live as one. Here's the power integration gives. It makes you unshakable. When people look at you, they don't see fragments. They see coherence. They see someone whose words match their steps, whose silence matches their strength, whose presence feels whole, and that wholeness commands respect without demanding it. I once met a teacher whose influence stretched far beyond her classroom. She wasn't famous, she wasn't loud, but her life was seamless. The way she taught, the way she cared for strangers, the way she disciplined herself, all were one. People trusted her instantly, not because of her title, but because of her consistency. She had no need to prove herself. Her life was her proof. At this stage, your challenge is clear. Do not chase fragments, chase wholeness. Bring your wisdom, your discipline, your perception into alignment until they form a single pattern. When you live this way, every step feels lighter because you no longer waste energy wearing masks. Every decision feels clearer because it springs from the same root. Every storm feels smaller because you are not divided against yourself. So remember, the strongest fortress is the one whose walls form a circle. The most unbreakable life is the one whose values, words, and actions form a unity. Let your life be seamless. Let it be whole. That is integration. That is Stoic strength. If this message speaks to you, and from here we step forward into an even greater test. Once wholeness is achieved, how do you carry it into the world without pride, without boasting, but with the quiet presence that compels respect without a sound? That is the journey ahead. You've seen how discipline sharpens the mind and how restraint transforms struggle into strength. But philosophy is never complete in fragments. Principles gain their weight only when lived, not spoken. Knowing is easy. Living it whole is the real test. This next step is not about adding more lessons, but about uniting them, about turning scattered practices into a seamless way of being. For the real power of Stoicism does not lie in individual keys, but in the harmony they create when your thoughts, your words, and your actions finally move as one. Advancing into this stage of the journey, imagine a vast hall filled with echoes of applause. The sound is intoxicating, wrapping around you like a warm cloak, yet fading faster than smoke in the wind. At first, it feels like triumph. But when the clapping stops, what remains? Do you stand taller, or do you feel emptier than before? This is the hidden danger of chasing recognition. The applause that lifts you in one moment can enslave you in the next. Now picture a craftsman alone in his workshop. No audience, no spotlight, only the rhythm of his tools striking steadily against wood and stone. Each movement is precise, deliberate, unseen. Yet in this silence, something profound is built. The pride he carries is not from the noise of others, but from the discipline of surpassing his own standard. That is the kind of pride no one can take away. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "It never ceases to amaze me. We all love ourselves more than other people, but care more about their opinion than our own." His words pierce like a blade, reminding us that the more we crave outside approval, the further we drift from our own strength. Think of Jiro Ono, the legendary sushi master of Tokyo. For decades, he shaped every grain of rice, every cut of fish, in pursuit of perfection no customer would ever see. His fame came late, almost by accident. But the foundation of his greatness was never applause. It was devotion, repetition, and relentless self-mastery. While the world celebrated his Michelin stars, his true victory was in the quiet discipline of surpassing himself day after day. This is what most forget. To boast about achievements is to plant seeds of envy and doubt in others, but more dangerously, it is to chain yourself to their response. Depend on applause, and silence becomes unbearable. Depend on recognition, and discipline dies. But when you learn to hold your victories quietly, to let them live in your bones instead of on your lips, you gain something rare: freedom. Freedom from judgment, freedom from envy, freedom from the endless cycle of proving yourself again and again. I knew a man who spoke constantly of his accomplishments. Every dinner conversation turned into a list of his triumphs. At first, people admired him, but over time, admiration soured into distance. His pride felt heavy, his presence draining. Contrast him with another who carried his victories like a hidden flame. He rarely spoke of them, but when he acted, the weight of his experience was undeniable. His silence made him magnetic, his presence commanding. Which of these two do you wish to be? Here is the lesson Stoicism offers. True achievement is its own reward. You do not need to shout it. You do not need to defend it. Let your results speak where words cannot. Seneca warned that scattered pride leads to wasted life. To seek approval is to lose control, but to master yourself in silence is to build a life no opinion can shake. At this stage, your challenge is clear. Hold your victories quietly. Guard them like treasures that grow stronger when kept within. Let your work speak for you, not your words. When you feel the urge to announce, to boast, to seek validation, pause. Ask yourself, am I seeking respect or am I giving away my peace? Silent. Because silence, when chosen with strength, is never emptiness, it is presence. And as we step forward, remember this. Silence not only guards your victories, it also opens the door to deeper connection, the kind born from true listening. That is where our path now leads. Advancing into this stage, imagine walking alone at dawn through a city just waking up. The streets are quiet, the air sharp, and every step feels like a conversation with yourself. No noise, no eyes watching, no applause to chase, only you and the weight of your own thoughts. In that silence, a deeper question rises. Are you living for the gaze of others or for the strength of your own soul? Now picture the difference between two lives. One person builds loudly, announcing each move, seeking constant recognition. The other builds quietly, brick by brick, unmoved by whether anyone sees. Which life endures when the noise fades? The Stoics were clear. Don't waste the remainder of your life in thoughts about others, Marcus Aurelius warned. For what is applause but an echo that disappears in the wind? What is recognition but a chain that binds your worth to the shifting opinion of strangers? Consider a mountain climber ascending alone, every step unseen, every handhold tested in silence. No one cheers as he climbs, but when he reaches the summit, the achievement is his alone, unshakable and complete. But here's the danger. You may already feel its pull. Social media, the office, even family tables are filled with the temptation to display your every step, to prove yourself again and again. At first, it feels like connection, but slowly it steals from you. You begin to perform instead of live. You begin to crave instead of grow, and what once was pure becomes poisoned by the need to be seen. Seneca warned, "He who seeks wisdom is a friend of his own soul." Notice that, a friend of his own soul, not the crowd's soul, not their cheers. Your task is not to feed the hunger of others, but to strengthen the core within you. When you choose silence after victory, when you let your deeds breathe without performance, you anchor yourself to a power the world cannot shake. I remember a young athlete who won his first championship. Cameras flashed, interviews poured in, everyone told him he was destined for greatness. For months, he lived in the applause, addicted to it. But when the attention moved on, his drive collapsed. He lost focus, and his career faded. Contrast this with another who, after each win, returned quietly to the training room. No boasting, no obsession with headlines, just discipline, just work. Years later, while others vanished, he remained, a testament not to recognition, but to resilience. Ask yourself now, are you feeding your growth, or are you feeding the crowd? Do you want to be admired for a moment, or respected for a lifetime? True strength doesn't need to shout. It doesn't need a stage. It moves with such steady presence that when people finally notice, they realize you've already surpassed them in silence. This is the challenge before you. Do not let the applause enslave you. Do not let recognition decide your worth. Guard your victories as you guard your struggles. Protect them from the erosion of vanity. Because when the noise fades, and it always does, you will be left only with what you have truly built. So hold your center. Let your life speak louder than your words. And if these words resonate with you, take a moment now, subscribe, and leave one word in the comments: steady. For sometimes a single word is enough to mark the shift from seeking recognition to seeking mastery. From here, the question deepens. If silence protects your victories, how do you also protect your mind when the world pulls you in every direction? That is where focus becomes not just a tool, but a weapon. Entering this stage of the journey, imagine sitting at a table where everyone talks at once. Opinions clash, voices rise, and each person is desperate to be heard. The noise is suffocating. Yet across from you sits someone who says nothing, who listens intently, whose silence feels heavier than all the words around. That is not weakness. That is presence. And in that presence lies a rare kind of power. Now think of how most people move through life. They interrupt. They answer before you finish. They carry a need to fill silence, as if quiet means they are losing. But the truth is the opposite. When you learn to listen in silence, you gain what others throw away. You notice the shift in a glance, the pause before a confession, the tremor in a voice that speaks more than the words themselves. This is where understanding is born. Seneca once said, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so that we may listen more and talk less." The Stoics knew that listening was not passive, it was discipline. It was the choice to set aside ego, to let someone else unfold before you without judgment or haste. In that silence, trust grows, respect deepens, and you begin to build connections that noise could never create. I recall the story of a young manager named Mark. At first, he believed leadership meant giving orders, speaking often, correcting quickly. His team grew tense. Misunderstandings multiplied. Until one day, he tried something different. He stayed quiet. He let each member speak fully, without interruption. For the first time, his team felt heard. The air shifted. Conflict dissolved. What his words could never accomplish, his silence achieved. That is the art of listening, not silence as absence, but silence as strength. Think about your own life. How many arguments could have softened if you had waited before replying? How many friendships could have deepened if you had listened instead of preparing your next response? Silence in listening does not make you smaller, it makes you larger, because you are no longer ruled by the impulse to speak. You are ruled by patience, and patience is rare. Marcus Aurelius wrote daily reminders to himself to be calm, to give others space, to remain steady even when provoked. His wisdom shows us that to listen is not to lose power, but to gain it. The one who listens understands more, and the one who understands always moves with greater strength. Picture again that table of voices. The arguments still swirl, but when you sit in silence, watching, absorbing, something happens. People begin to turn toward you. They sense the weight of your presence. They wonder what you are thinking. They respect the restraint. And when you finally speak, your words carry more force than all the noise combined. That is the power of silence in listening. It makes every word count. So here's the challenge. In your next conversation, resist the urge to fill every gap. Let silence breathe. Let the other person feel heard. You may be surprised how quickly walls fall, how quickly trust rises. This is not just communication, it is strategy, it is self-mastery. If these words resonate with you, and in the comments, write one word: listen. Because sometimes a single choice to listen reshapes not only your relationships, but your entire life. And from here, the journey sharpens further. For if listening gives you strength in the moment, what about the ability to see farther ahead? To hold a vision so steady that no storm, no distraction, no temptation can shake it. That is the discipline of foresight, the next key we must unfold. Advancing into the next chapter, imagine a farmer standing alone in his field at dusk. The soil looks barren, the horizon quiet, and to the untrained eye his labor seems wasted. Yet he knows what others cannot see, that the seeds beneath the ground are gathering strength for a harvest that may be months, even years away. His patience is his power. His vision stretches farther than the moment. Now ask yourself, how often do we live only for today, chasing the quick applause, the fleeting praise, the fast success? The world is addicted to immediacy. A trend rises in the morning, and by night it is gone. People exhaust themselves running after sparks that burn bright but fade before they can warm. But those who hold to a longer vision walk differently. They are not swayed by every shift. They build foundations that storms cannot move. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself not to be dazzled by passing things, but to focus on what is enduring. "Don't dream of what you don't have," he wrote, "but count the blessings you do possess, and think how you would crave them if they weren't yours." His words are a shield against the lure of quick gains. They call us back to the slow strength of persistence. Consider Warren Buffett. For decades, he ignored the panic of the market. While others scrambled for short-term profit, he held his course, knowing that true wealth is not built in weeks, but in years of discipline. He once said, "No one gets rich quickly and stays rich for long." His fortune was not just in money, it was in the self-control to resist what dazzled everyone else. That is long-term vision alive. Think too of your own life. How many times have you started something only to abandon it because results did not come fast enough? A new habit broken after a week. A project dropped because recognition was slow. Compare that to the quiet discipline of someone who keeps going, who invests daily without applause. One page read becomes a library. One coin saved becomes a fortune. One act of practice becomes mastery. The Stoics understood this deeply. Seneca warned that we waste life not because it is short, but because we scatter it. To stretch life is to focus it, and to focus it is to aim far ahead. Each choice, then, must be measured not by its immediate comfort, but by its lasting worth. Picture two builders. One throws up a house quickly with weak wood and fragile stone. Applause comes fast, but the house falls at the first storm. The other builds slowly, laying stone upon stone, unseen and uncelebrated. Years later, his house still stands while the other has crumbled. Which life would you rather build? At this stage, the lesson is sharp. Do not sell your future for the thrill of the moment. Do not trade decades of strength for seconds of praise. Hold the horizon in your mind. Let your patience be your discipline. And when storms come, remember, the farmer still trusts the seed. So guard your vision. Think in years, not in minutes. Build in silence, not for quick applause, but for lasting impact. And when the crowd looks back, wondering how you endured when so many faded, you will know it was not luck, it was foresight. If this message speaks to you, vision. Because sometimes a single word reminds you of the future you're building, even when no one else can see it yet. And from here, let us move into the quiet refuge that strengthens such vision, the solitude where the noise falls away and the soul finally hears itself clearly. Entering this stage, imagine stepping away from the noise of a crowded street and finding yourself in a quiet garden. The world outside still hums with urgency, but here, for the first time, you can hear your own breath. The silence feels strange at first, almost heavy, but slowly it shifts into something else, clarity. This is the refuge of solitude, not an escape, but a return to yourself. Now think of how often we hide behind masks. We pretend to be strong when inside we are breaking. We chase recognition even when it leaves us emptier. We exhaust ourselves proving worth to those who never asked. But in solitude, the masks fall away. In solitude, you face yourself, not the image, not the performance, but the truth. And truth, even when uncomfortable, is the root of freedom. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul." He knew solitude is not weakness, it is sanctuary. The noise of the world will always try to shape you, but when you retreat inward, you reclaim the ground no one can invade. Let me give you a story. Anna, a young professional, once faced a crushing failure. Her work collapsed. Her reputation was questioned, and whispers surrounded her. Panic told her to act fast, to fight back, to prove herself immediately. But instead, she chose solitude. She stepped back for days, journaling, breathing, reflecting, and in that quiet, her emotions settled. The anger softened. The fear lost its grip. When she returned, her choices were calm, precise, unshakable. Solitude had given her what panic never could: clarity. Here lies the strength too many overlook. Solitude heals. It restores energy drained by chaos. It sharpens your vision when the path feels clouded. It allows you to step back from the battlefield, not in surrender, but in strategy. The retreat is not running away. It is preparation for a stronger return. Think of a warrior before battle. He sharpens his blade in silence. He steadies his breath alone. Without that pause, without that preparation, he would be reckless. Life is no different. Without solitude, you cannot hear your own voice. Without solitude, you lose your center in the crowd. At this stage, ask yourself, when was the last time you sat in true solitude? No phone, no distractions, just you, your breath, your thoughts. Were you restless, or did you find a deeper strength waiting? The answer reveals much about the state of your soul. So here is the reminder. Solitude is not emptiness. It is fullness reclaimed. It is where you strip away the noise and rediscover the discipline that storms cannot touch. Protect that space. Enter it often, for in solitude you don't run from life. You prepare to live it more fully. Sometimes a single word is the anchor that pulls you back to yourself. And from here, the journey continues. For once solitude has given you clarity, the next test emerges. How to act not from impulse, but with wisdom, turning every decision into a step that leads forward. At this stage, imagine standing on a mountain ledge after a storm has passed. The wind has calmed, the clouds are breaking, and the valley stretches wide beneath you. You feel the urge to rush forward, to act quickly, to reclaim what the storm took. But the Stoics remind us, true strength is not in haste, it is in wisdom, guiding action. Now picture the moments when emotions push you to move too fast. Anger demands a quick response. Fear begs you to retreat. Excitement tempts you into reckless choices. Most people obey. They react without pause, only to regret later what could not be undone. Wisdom begins where reaction ends. Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." The pause between impulse and action is the forge of mastery. I once knew a young man who was betrayed by a close friend. His first instinct was revenge. He drafted messages, plotted ways to expose the betrayal, felt the fire urging him to strike back. But instead, he stopped. He wrote his anger into a journal, slept on it, and waited. Days later, when his mind was clear, he chose not retaliation but redirection, investing his time in building new alliances and sharpening his skills. Months passed, and his growth outshone the betrayal. His silence was not weakness, it was strategy. This is the essence of wisdom in action. It does not deny emotion, it harnesses it. Anger becomes fuel for discipline. Fear becomes caution. Excitement becomes momentum, but only if guided by reason. Seneca warned that anger unruled is a form of madness. To feel it is human. To act blindly upon it is slavery. Think of the archer. He does not release the arrow in haste. He steadies his breath, waits for the right moment, then lets it fly. His victory is not in the strength of his arm, but in the timing of his release. Life is no different. Every choice is an arrow. Fire too soon, and you miss. Wait for wisdom, and you strike true. At this stage, ask yourself, how often have you given away power by acting too quickly? How many words were spoken that could not be taken back? How many decisions made in haste chained you to consequences you never wanted? Wisdom in action is the art of breaking that chain. So, here is the call. Slow down. Choose clarity over chaos. Let your actions be carved by reason, not hijacked by impulse. Strength is not proven by speed, but by steadiness. If this resonates with you, take a moment, subscribe, and in the comments, write one word: steady. Because steady is where strength begins. And from here, the question sharpens further. If wisdom guides your action, what about the final challenge, accepting the blows of life that no action can change and turning even loss into liberation? That is where we go next. These 12 Stoic keys are not just lessons, but instruments to shape a life of resilience and clarity. The true distance between staying the same and surpassing yourself is not talent, but steady action. Which key speaks to you most? Share it below with just 2 words. If this message resonates, subscribe and continue walking this path. Keep steady, keep rising.